Gabe's not going to come knocking on your door with his jackbooted thugs, yelling at you about your pirating Steam.
All right, Bazzite.
I say Bazzite.
Bazzite?
I think Bazzite. No, not Bazzite. That's bad. The people
okay.
yell at you in the comments already for that
Okay,
one.
well, what is it? What is Bazzite?
Bazzite is a Linux distro that is kind of loosely based around the idea of putting the Steam Deck OS UI on a normal Linux distro with all the stuff that makes the Steam Deck good. Proton and all the Windows compatibility.
So it's like, what if Valve made an OS that wasn't just for the Steam Deck?
Yeah, that's a good way. That's a good way to think about it. It's a more general purpose. It's a little bit easier to manage than something like HoloISO, which we looked at a couple months ago. And it's based on Fedora's Atomic Core, which is their immutable style Linux distro. All that immutable means is that the core software that makes the distro work is all packaged up together on a basically unwritable partition, so that when you need to update it, instead of downloading a million little patches for a million different things, you just get a whole new build every couple of weeks when you hit the update button, and it wipes everything out on that root partition, so that you don't have to worry about it. It's safer, and it makes it harder for you to mess up your Linux install. Is the TLDR for non-interested non-Linux nerds.
But does Valve make this, or who makes this?
Well, so Valve makes bits and pieces of it, because this is, Linux is open source, right? So what that means is the people who make Bazzite look at the stuff that Valve makes that they like, the Steam Deck UI, the window manager that they use for that, the Proton stuff, all the stuff that makes the games work on the platform, and they just, pull that stuff into their distro, totally nice and legal, open source.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing that's going to get you in trouble with Valve. Gabe's not going to come knocking on your door with his jackbooted thugs, yelling at you about your pirating Steam.
Okay, all right.
And then they package it up on top of this Fedora install, and they do a really nice job of making it accessible and easy to do. And part of that actually is the way that the installer works.
Okay, yeah. How does it work? Please walk somebody through the setup process.
Well, so when you install Windows, you put a thumb drive in that has Windows on it, and then it asks you a bunch of questions. At the end, it says, "Don't worry, your computer's cool. We're not going to hurt anything." And then it boots into Windows the first time. This works a little bit differently. They actually ask you when you go to the Bazzite website, which the URL is probably down there somewhere. It pops up some questions when you hit "I want to download Bazzite." It says, "Okay, what kind of computer are you putting this on? Are you putting this on a desktop PC? Are you putting it on a home theater PC? Putting it on one of these handhelds?" And then it says, "What's your primary graphics card?" Right? You answer these questions, and then finally it says, "Hey, what UI do you want to boot into? Do you want to boot into like a normal Linux desktop like GNOME or KDE, or do you want to boot into the Steam Deck UI?" And you can kind of choose those based on the other answers. And it gives you at the end an installer image, that basically has done the hard stuff. It's done all the configuration stuff to get you to the place that you want to be based on the answers you gave to the question. Now, there's some caveats.
Yes.
The caveats are that depending on what graphics card you have, you may or may not have other options available.
Oh.
So for example, right now, as we record this video, this may change in the future, the Steam Deck UI is limited to AMD and Intel Arc GPUs only.
Intel Arc specifically.
Intel Arc specifically. Okay. Older Intel integrated stuff won't work. NVIDIA has some bugs, so it doesn't work. We actually tested it. We'll talk about it later on, but with some Intel integrated stuff. And it kind of works. It's not great. But the nice thing is you don't have to do any weird Linuxy post-configuration stuff if you just want to, say, put Bazzite on your ROG Ally X.
You are comfortable around Linux. You are comfortable around lines of code and things like that. Me, not so much. So I was a little worried getting into it, but luckily I used the step-by-step process from a fellow YouTuber, a friend, Retro Gamecore, has an amazing Bazzite installer process video. I went through that, and honestly, it was a breeze. The only thing that kind of like hung me up a little bit is that when you get to the actual installer, the text is really small, and you kind of have to use a mouse and keyboard to get through that stuff. But other than that, I mean, it was pretty damn straightforward for at least loading it on the ROG Ally X.
Yes, and it's the same everywhere. You need a mouse and keyboard, but once you get that image from the Bazzite website, you download the Bazzite ISO. You grab a tool like Rufus or Balena Etcher. These are both tools that can turn ISO files into bootable thumb drives. And you plug a thumb drive in, you copy the image over, you plug that thumb drive into your set top, into your small form factor, your PC, your handheld, and then boot off of it. And it just basically asks you the questions. But it's all pretty tractable. And did you have to use the terminal at all? Did you have to use a command line?
No, not for the install process. No, not at all. So yeah, I didn't have to touch a terminal. I didn't have to touch any sort of lines. I didn't actually even have to go into the Linux front end if I didn't want to. So I mostly looked at it on a handheld perspective. You mostly looked at it from a set-top box kind of perspective, which you had featured this in a HoloISO video that we did a couple months ago, but now you decided to load Bazzite on it. How was loading Bazzite here? And then also, how was the install process versus something like HoloISO, which does kind of a similar thing?
So the install process is the HoloISO install process is pretty straightforward. It's definitely uses the Steam process for reinstalling SteamOS on a Steam Deck, right? So there's some weird stuff like it says, "Hey, you don't have a battery."
Oh yeah.
It's just weird messages. It's not anything you have to worry about it, but it does prompt you with some weird choices along the way. I thought that the experience of using Bazzite on this device, this is the Beelink SER7, I think, was fabulous. Like it is really the UI is snappy. It's great at streaming. What I was looking for primarily is a device to stream from my giant PC with a 7800 X3D and a 4090 in the other room. They're both wired into wired Ethernet in my house. So like it's basically a no-brainer to get streamed high-quality video games in my living room. But I didn't like using the Steam Deck for that because it feels weird to have the dock. It's a little unwieldy, right?
Yeah.
The price point on this SER7, because it's a kind of high-end APU in this small box that's designed to hang on a VESA mount on the back of like a work computer or something, it's kind of expensive. It's like $750, which is frankly too much for a streaming exclusive box. And the place that the whole thing breaks down, if you're playing on a 1080p set, it's probably fine. I don't know how many people have 1080p sets now, but when I played on a 4K set, it wasn't a great experience because we're using essentially a slightly souped up version of the hardware that's in a Steam Deck on 4 times as many pixels, 6 times as many pixels, something like that.
Yeah.
And there's no DLSS. There's nothing. FSR could kind of close a little bit of the gap there, but it's not fantastic.
I mean, it's still a mobile graphics on a large screen.
On a big 4K TV. So
which doesn't stop it from actually navigating Bazzite, right? Like you didn't run into any bottlenecks there.
The UI stuff was great, right?
Like at least on this system, but on another system you had some problems, right?
Well, so yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
But on the SER7, even 2D stuff was fine, like Dead Cells and Hades and games that were mostly 2D. A lot of kind of indie games, a lot of your boomer shooters is I think what the kids call them, but like the things that look like Quake, but are modern games. They ran great. When I got into modern AAA stuff, I was trying to play God of War, Horizon Forbidden Dawn, Helldivers 2. I had to crank the resolution down and use the upscaler to get to a point that it was playable. Yeah. So like you're not going to use this as your primary gaming PC on a 4K TV at 4K resolution, which isn't a huge surprise. Like we look at that, we know that's a $750 box. It's not got the juice. But for streaming, it was great. I wish that there was a $200 box that had a similar APU, or even lower power APU that could run the UI that I could just stream to, because that would be my ideal box for this. AMD doesn't make that, but you know who does? Intel.
Oh yeah, wait, we got a couple right here.
Yeah, so I tested a Zotac Z-Box, which is a little kind of semi-fanless Celeron-based machine, I think.
Very tiny.
Very tiny. It's designed for like signage at airports and stuff like that, I think. And then this Beelink S12, which is a 12th generation Intel Celeron. It has a lot of like the hardware transcode for video and stuff like that. But it's a reasonably capable dual-core machine. I figured it'd probably be enough, except for the driver incompatibilities with the integrated GPUs. It turns out the driver incompatibilities with the integrated GPUs are, it'll work. Everything's just kind of, remember how the Xbox One kind of the UI was a little bit slow every time you did something?
A little slow, yeah.
It's like that.
Oh, it's like that. Okay.
I wouldn't recommend it probably. I'm going to say not a fan, but maybe we'll get there one day. Maybe AMD will make cheaper APUs. I don't know what'll happen.
Maybe integrated ARC will come down in price. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think that there's a world where you take an ITX machine and put one of the absolute cheapest Newegg ITX bundles you can find with the cheapest ARC GPU and jam that in here and put it behind your TV and you have a pretty good setup.
Yeah, maybe.
So
So theoretically doable on a TV experience, definitely doable on a handheld experience. I guess the next question that I have is like, what Is it just perfect? Were there any other headaches with Bazzite? It's just like it just works like SteamOS.
Well, so
Because not for me. I definitely feel like it's like 90% SteamOS. Like there was definitely a little bit of quirks here and there that I ran into.
it's a little less fiddly than it was with HoloISO, where we had like default resolution expectations that were constantly wrong. It's not. It's it's still Linux. It's still you're still going to have occasional problems with games that have, say, non-Linux compatible DRM or anti-cheat aren't going to work just like they wouldn't on the Steam Deck. So no Fortnite. Sorry, Fortnite players. But for the most part, I found it pretty comparable to Steam Deck. I didn't have a lot of obvious problems.
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't call it problems. It's just like it's not exactly like it. Like
For example,
when I hit the volume button on the ROG Ally X, it doesn't say volume. It says like family 17/19 something.
Oh.
The actual name of whatever that audio device is probably. Also, launching the overlay. It just takes a little extra second longer.
You're talking about the right button, the
or
one that does
the
power
left.
consumption.
Yeah.
Did the TDP? So you tested on the ROG Ally X.
Yes.
Did the power consumption stuff work? Could you change the TDP and all that?
Yeah. So there's the Steam Deck overlay, right?
Okay.
That you actually you hit the button once and it'll bring up the normal Steam Deck overlay. If you hit it twice, that brings up the Bazzite overlay where you can manually adjust the TDP, certain other things. So some settings are still in the Steam overlay, some settings are in the Bazzite overlay, but for the most part, I was able to figure it out. But like I said, navigating it was just a touch slower than what I would have on, experienced on a Steam Deck proper.
Well, and one of the other things I found is that since I was playing mostly with a gamepad connected via Bluetooth to the box, I had to learn shortcuts for buttons that don't exist on a normal gamepad.
Oh yeah.
So
definitely.
like it's like pressing the Xbox button plus X opens up that side pop-out menu or whatever.
So another place where I had a little bit of problems with controller compatibility. So specifically on this box, I did take this home and do a little bit of testing on my own on a TV. I tried 3 different controller setups, and I know you tried some too. I had an Xbox Elite Series 2 with the wireless dongle that worked fine.
Flawless,
Mapping was completely fine. The next one I tried was the Razer Wolverine V3 Pro, which just launched, but surprisingly, it actually did work.
Oh.
The only problem, like the buttons mapped completely fine. The only problem I had was like connectivity issues, which I don't know if it's with the controller itself or with maybe the setup here. And the third controller I used was the Scuf Envision Pro. Now that one did not map out by default.
Oh.
That does have like built-in hardware mapping that you can do, so maybe it just, and I had already mapped it in Windows.
So maybe
it
your
just
profile.
yeah, so maybe the profile was not right. You can probably go in and set your own custom profile, but I didn't really take the time to do that. It didn't work specifically for me, so.
I tested more normal controllers that people will actually use.
Hey, I like high-end controllers, I'm sorry.
I tested a PlayStation DualSense 5, worked fine. A Nintendo Switch Pro controller, worked fine. An Xbox Series Bluetooth controller, worked fine. And then I also took the 8BitDo Ultimate Bluetooth controller that has the 2.4 gigahertz dongle that you can switch the switch on the back, and it worked fine in both modes on that. It took a little bit of configuring to get the dongle to detect. It might have been a pairing problem on my end with the controller turning on or off, but it worked fine too. It used the X input style buttons, so what was labeled B on the 8BitDo controller was A and vice versa, but it was fine.
So yes, even though I did run into some hitches here and there, overall, I mean, it was a rock solid experience, even more so than I expected. Like I was just like, oh wow, this does just feel like a SteamOS. The question I have though is Valve recently has mentioned, hey, we're pretty close to releasing a SteamOS that other people can use. Maybe Asus will actually ship with it integrated into it. Why would you use Bazzite as opposed to just waiting for Valve to release their own?
Well, I mean, I think it doesn't cost anything to try it, right? This is the thing.
Just
it's
time.
Linux. It's just
Time is money.
Time is money. Gordon's old thing about Linux is free as long as your time is worth nothing. It comes here, right? But it's fun to experiment. I think that the things you get in terms of power consumption, battery life, and stuff like that with SteamOS, the ability to hit the power button and have it sleep, really nice, it turns out. Right? It keeps the state of the game. It just turns off the thing, and then when you turn it back on, it works again.
It is nice.
I also think, and it seems like the SteamOS interfaces are getting the kind of new style Steam library sharing support that's only in the beta on the PC side.
Oh yeah.
So you could do the beta there. I don't like if you're interested in this, you know why you want to install it, right?
Yeah.
I think it makes much more sense for the handhelds than it does for set-top boxes, desktops, whatever. I think if you have a handheld and you're like, man, Windows is really annoying here, give it a try. If you're happy with Windows, wait until Valve rolls out the Steam Deck OS.
Yeah.
My guess though is that at least out of the gate on whatever Valve does, Bazzite's going to do a better job with the initial configurations for the 50 million different configurations that are out there in the handheld market right now than Valve will probably do right out of the gate. Because my guess is Valve will ship something to be like, hey, good luck, configure it yourself. And then there'll be 50 million community profiles for each controller that are like, this is Phaedra 64's ultimate Rogue Ally X configurator in the Steam configuration guides, and it'll have like 300 people that have thumbs upped it, and that's the one you'll end up choosing. So
okay, maybe
something to be said about the bespoke configuration for each device.
Yeah. Either way, this has been a fun experience, and it was well worth my time. Like now, I'm like, holy crap! Like Bazzite on a handheld is definitely the way to go. Like it is the best of both worlds, especially in this setup. I actually have a dual boot setup, so I can go into Windows for the games that I need to. But for the most part, I've been using Bazzite, and I love it.
So my question for you is, so you're using Bazzite as the daily driver on that now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and so only going into Windows when there's a game that specifically won't run on Linux. So.
The other benefit of Bazzite also, of course, is that it includes Lutris and the Heroic Games Launcher, which you'll be able to install on whatever Valve ships too. But it comes by default. It has EmuDeck installed. You can install that by default when you're doing the configuration. And those let you run, respectively, games from other Windows stores and different emulators of the million different emulators that are available for like old SNES games and even stuff up to current generation, some current generation titles.
Yeah, but there's a lot of good coverage out there. I want to specifically call out again Retro Game Core. Go check out his definitive guide for installing Bazzite, because I used that step by step and worked out perfectly for me. So definitely go check that out. Yeah, I think this is a fun kind of thing. Where do we take it next, though?
I mean, that's kind of my question. I'm curious what people think. I'm still in search of that set-top box. You know, there's not a lot of movement in that space for like a lightweight set-top box to stream games to. I would love to hear what people think we should look at next. I know that there's a couple of other. We picked Bazzite to talk about this time because it seems like it's the 800-pound gorilla in this space. But there are definitely some other distros that are interesting. We could look at them. I would love to know what people want to take a look at and see.
Either way, thank you for coming on this journey with us as well. If you want to see more coverage, be sure to subscribe here on PC World. Until then, we will catch you in the next video.